Wolverine and Captain America. See what kind of the course of this to say about this and check this out.
We're going in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what up everyone? Tay here. I hope you're all doing lovely today. And today what I want to talk about in this video is a bunch of stuff regarding the Thunderbolts and Captain America 4 and Wolverine and mutants in the MCU. Because back in December, a few weeks ago, a bunch of plot leaks started dropping online for the Thunderbolts and Captain America 4. And I should note that I actually recorded most of the audio for this video back in December when these leaks first came out. But then I had to go out of town for the holidays and didn't get a chance to finish it then, so I quickly finished it up now, and I still wanted to release it because even though the leaks came out last month, it's still a fun Thunderbolts, Captain America, Wolverine video. Which, before I go on, I should actually probably clarify that real quick, that in this video, we are going to be talking about the eventual 616 version of Wolverine that has not yet been introduced into the MCU. And I just wanted to say that because I know we have Hugh Jackman coming up in Deadpool 3, and he'll probably also have a role in Avengers Secret Wars, but Hugh Jackman is the Wolverine from the Fox X-Men universe from, you know, the bigger multiverse, but the Wolverine I'm going to be talking about in this video will be the MCU 616 version of Wolverine that Marvel Studios have hinted at, but not yet officially introduced, or as far as we know, even cast. And that when they do cast the character, they will probably cast somebody a bit younger, so that person can go on to play Wolverine for the next 10 to 20 years. So yeah, before we get into the video, I just wanted to clarify that, just so no one's confused, since Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine is a very hot topic of late. And then the other thing I should probably mention before we get into everything is that since we are going to be talking about the leaks for Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts, that obviously we will be getting into some potentially pretty deep spoiler territory. So this is your official spoiler warning, just in case you don't want to be tainted with any specific information. And then also, if you missed it, I did post a new long video yesterday about Avengers Secret Wars, Ant-Man Quantumania, the Marvels, and the connections between the different multiversal MacGuffins like the Ten Rings and the Bangles. So if you missed that video, you should check it out. It's linked in the description below with a bunch of other recent videos. And then lastly, just one other thing, and that is that there will not be any super thanks questions at the end of today's video because I answered all of them in yesterday's video. But if you'd like to leave a super thanks with any questions in this video, then I will answer your questions in the next video, or just give you a shout out if you didn't leave a question. So yeah, just throwing that out there that any super thanks questions from yesterday's video or today's video, I will answer in the next video. But anyways, I think that's it for all the introductory stuff, so now let's get into it and talk about Wolverine and the Thunderbolts and Captain America 4 and all that stuff.
Now this is more like it. Yeah, well, things are about to get weird. So when they do, we're not gonna need a Captain America. We're gonna need a US agent.
Okay, so as I'm sure many of you already know, this past month, there's been some huge plot leaks dropping for both Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts. And these leaks are coming from very reliable sources who have gotten a ton of stuff accurate in the past on multiple movies throughout Phase 4. And it's worth noting that usually with movies like this, there's script rewrites and stuff changes during filming, so I'm sure that stuff will change and that this won't be exactly what happens once the movies come out, but at this point in time, these leaks seem like a pretty good indication of what's going to happen in those two movies. Okay, so what these leaks say about Captain America 4 is that much of the movie is going to revolve around the return of Thaddeus Ross. And according to the leaks, the reason that Thaddeus Ross will be so important in these movies is because at the beginning of Captain America 4, it will be revealed that Thaddeus Ross has become the newly elected president of the United States. And according to the leaks, it says there will be multiple other villains in the movie as well besides Ross, and that these include characters like Valentina and the Leader, among a few others, but that the main antagonist of the movie will be President Ross himself. And the leaks also say that a big part of the movie will include President Ross bringing back his super soldier program, and that this will probably be what ultimately leads to him becoming the MCU version of the Red Hulk, which it says that will happen in the movie as well. And then as far as Sam goes and what he will be up to in the movie, it says that Sam will be working to assemble a new team of Avengers so they can come together to take down President Ross. And then as far as what happens in the Thunderbolts movie, according to the leaks, it says that much of the plot of that will revolve around the introduction of Robert Reynolds, aka the Sentry. And that Sentry will be created under the orders of Valentina, and that at the beginning of the movie, or early on in the movie, he will actually start off as a member of the Thunderbolts team, but that as the movie goes on, he will start to lose his mind, just like he did in the comics, and that this will lead to him going rogue and the Thunderbolts having to stop him at all costs. And I just have to say, on a quick side note, this sounds like it's being adapted straight from the Dark Avengers comics and the Dark Reign story and the Siege story, which just reaffirms my whole Dark Reign Phase 5 theory that I've talked about in past videos, because for a long time now I've been saying that once Marvel Studios gets to an eventual Thunderbolts movie, that I thought they would probably be adapting the Dark Avengers and Dark Reign story, and that it wouldn't just be for the Thunderbolts movie, but for the other grounded movies and projects coming out around that same time. And based on these leaks, it sounds like that's exactly what's happening. But that's really something I should talk about in a future video, because if I start talking about that, then this video will be way too long and we'll be here all day. But just something to think about while we're talking about all this. But anyways, that's the general overview of the plot leaks for those two movies, Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts. However, I did leave out one of the most important parts of the leaks, and that is that, according to the leaks, in Captain America 4, Marvel Studios are going to finally reveal what's been happening with Tiamat, the giant celestial body that's been out there just chilling in the ocean. And that's because apparently the body of Tiamat has adamantium inside of it, and this apparently leads to the US government getting into a conflict or maybe even a war with a bunch of other countries and other villains, because everyone wants to claim the island so they can mine it for adamantium. And this is something that several different leakers have all been talking about and mentioning in their plot leaks. So from what I can gather by reading the different leaks is that the body of Tiamat containing adamantium and the conflict with other countries is something that will first be introduced in Captain America 4, but that it won't be a huge part of the movie because it's really introduced so it can then become a bigger plot point in the Thunderbolts movie. Because remember, the Thunderbolts movie will come out just 2.5 months after Captain America 4. So these movies are coming out back to back, one right after the other. And according to the leaks, there will be a lot of stuff in Captain America 4 that is in there to kind of set up what happens in the Thunderbolts movie. So apparently what happens is, after this whole concept with Tiamat and adamantium has been introduced in Captain America 4, then in the Thunderbolts movie, we will actually see the Thunderbolts team being deployed on a mission to Tiamat Island to protect it from other villains or other countries that are there trying to mine the adamantium. And according to one of the leakers, Marvel Studios is also planning on turning the body of Tiamat into Genosha, which is the famous island from the comics that is a refuge for mutants. And I think that would be really cool, and it's something I could definitely see happening, but I think it probably won't be called Genosha in either of these two movies. It's probably something that Marvel Studios are just kind of setting up for the future, but won't be implicitly obvious right away. And I gotta say that the whole adamantium thing with Tiamat and the Celestials actually makes a lot of sense to me, because when it came to the Celestials in the Eternals movie, Marvel Studios took almost all of their influence for the Celestials from the Earth X comic series. And in the comics, the Celestials from the Earth X universe were beings of pure energy who actually wore these giant suits of vibranium armor to contain that energy. So it sounds like Marvel Studios could be adapting that same concept into the MCU and doing kind of a similar thing, but instead of the Celestials' bodies of the MCU containing vibranium, they will instead contain adamantium, or maybe even be composed of adamantium. So yeah, I think that theory makes a lot of sense, and it would be really cool, and obviously has big implications for the future, and mutants and Wolverine and all of that stuff.
As you look closer, you do see that there's bigger ideas at work here. When you see things like super soldier programs, suddenly you begin to understand how our whole universe came together.
Everything that the military does in the Marvel Universe after that is an attempt to recreate the super soldier. We've already seen in the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner, Emil Blonsky turning into the Hulk, turning into the Abomination. Those were all attempts at replicating what Steve Rogers was. General Ross and Emil Blonsky have a discussion about the super soldier program.
In WW2, they initiated a sub-program for biotech force enhancement.
Yeah, super soldier.
Okay, so what we are going to talk about in this section is actually a theory that I've talked about in the past in some videos like a year or two ago. But I wanted to kind of revisit this theory again in light of these new plot leaks. And basically what I talked about in those older videos is how really Marvel Studios has already laid out a lot of the elements for an MCU Wolverine backstory going all the way back into Phase 1. Because as most of us know, in the comics, Wolverine got his adamantium-laced skeleton and claws after he was experimented on under the Weapon Plus program with the Weapon X project. And the Weapon Plus program was started with Project Rebirth. And we know that in the MCU, Project Rebirth was created by Abraham Erskine and Howard Stark back in the 1940s, and that's how Steve Rogers was turned into a super soldier and became Captain America. So in the comics, Wolverine was Weapon X, also known as Weapon 10. But Steve Rogers was actually Weapon 1. He was the first super soldier that was created under the Weapon Plus program. And this is significant because not only Project Rebirth, but also the Weapon Plus program have already actually been introduced into the MCU. Because like I said, Project Rebirth was of course introduced back in the 1940s in Captain America the First Avenger, and then the Weapon Plus program was actually renamed as the Weapons Plus program, and it was first introduced back in 2008 in the Incredible Hulk movie. Because the Weapons Plus program was actually the name of the military super soldier program that was overseen by General Ross, and this was the program that initially gave Emil Blonsky the serum that ultimately led to him later becoming the Abomination. And another thing that's revealed in the Incredible Hulk movie is that Bruce Banner was actually also working for the Weapons Plus program when he was first transformed into the Hulk. Now, Bruce didn't actually know he was working for that program because Ross lied to him and told him he was working on a different project, and this led to Bruce testing a gamma-radiated sample of the super soldier serum on himself, not knowing what it was, and this is how he first became the Hulk. So in the MCU, Abomination, Hulk, and Captain America's origins are all rooted in the Weapons Plus program. However, those aren't actually the only characters in the MCU that also have connections to the Weapons Plus program. Two other current characters connected to the Weapons Plus program in the comics that we just saw in Phase 4 are Isaiah Bradley and Man-Thing. Because in the comics, Man-Thing was originally a man named Theodore Salas, and he was a scientist who worked under the Weapons Plus program, and during this time he injected himself with an experimental serum and then shortly afterwards crashed his car into a swamp, and that's how he transformed into Man-Thing. And as we know, Man-Thing was just recently introduced into the MCU in Werewolf by Night. Now, we have no idea what his backstory is going to be in the MCU, but it's possible it could be the same backstory or a similar backstory as to what it was in the comics, and if that's the case, then he could also easily have connections to the Weapons Plus program in the MCU as well. And then besides that, like I said, there's also Isaiah Bradley. And in the comics, what happened is shortly after Project Rebirth turned Steve Rogers into a super soldier, the military once again wanted to experiment on soldiers and see if they could perfect this super soldier serum, and Isaiah Bradley was one of those soldiers who had these horrendous experiments done to him, and he was the only one it worked on. And that is basically the same backstory that Isaiah had in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. However, the name of that super soldier program is never said out loud or confirmed. However, based on Project Rebirth being the program that made Steve Rogers, on top of the fact that the Weapons Plus program was still around in 2008 during the Incredible Hulk, it does seem like there's a good chance that the Weapons Plus program is also who did these experiments on Isaiah in the past. And it's not just those characters who have past associations and connections with the Weapons Plus program in the MCU. Howard Stark is another character that probably was connected to the Weapons Plus program in the past, because we know that Howard was one of the founders of Project Rebirth back in the 1940s, who helped Abraham Erskine turn Steve Rogers into a super soldier. But then we also know that he was still working on some kind of super soldier serum at the time of his death in 1991. Now, we never got any clear backstory on what Howard was doing with this super soldier serum at that time, but we do know that he was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and in the comics, S.H.I.E.L.D. was also another organization that was connected to several different projects under the Weapons Plus program. Or another character that could also have worked for the Weapons Plus program at some point in the past in the MCU is Dr. Wilfred Nagel, who was introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier as the one who was creating the super soldier serum for the Power Broker. And that's the serum that John Walker ended up taking. Because in the comics, Dr. Wilfred Nagel worked for the Weapons Plus program in the past, and he is actually the one that experimented on Isaiah Bradley. Now, we did get a little bit of informational backstory on Dr. Nagel in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that he worked for the CIA at one time and then was recruited by Hydra, but we never got a ton of backstory, so it's possible that where he learned to create the super soldier serum could have been working for the Weapons Plus program back during his time at the CIA before the Weapons Plus program was shut down. And another interesting detail that relates to this goes back to the Incredible Hulk movie, and that is that the Stark Industries cryo chamber that held the Weapons Plus super soldier serum is labeled saying that this serum was created by a Dr. Reinstein. And this is interesting because in the comics, both Abraham Erskine and Wilfred Nagel both used the name Dr. Reinstein as an alias. Now, chances are nothing will probably come of that, but it is an interesting Easter egg, and it's definitely something that Marvel Studios could always tie back to if they wanted to kind of give some backstory and origins to the Weapons Plus program if it does become a bigger part of the MCU's future, especially with characters like Red Hulk and Wolverine coming up. But anyways, my point is, why I'm kind of rambling about all these different characters, is that in the MCU, almost every version of the super soldier serum that we've seen is either directly or indirectly connected to Project Rebirth and the Weapons Plus program. And once Wolverine is finally introduced into the 616 universe of the MCU, there's a very, very good chance that his origin story will also be largely connected to the Weapons Plus program as well because of the Weapon X project. So, with all of that said, why am I bringing this up again in today's video? Well, like I mentioned earlier, there's multiple things that were mentioned in these new plot leaks for Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts that lead me to believe that Marvel Studios are probably going to be bringing back the Weapons Plus program, and that they will also be using those two movies to further set up the introduction of the MCU 616 version of Wolverine. Now, the obvious thing that was said in the leaks that would help to hint towards Wolverine is the introduction of adamantium into the MCU. Because even though adamantium is a very popular metal in the comics that's been used for a bunch of different things, what it is definitely the most well known for is Wolverine and his claws. But the other thing that's mentioned in the leaks is how in Captain America 4, much of the movie is going to revolve around Thaddeus Ross, well now President Ross, bringing back and trying to perfect the super soldier serum and eventually becoming Red Hulk. Because we know that back in 2008 in the MCU, at that point in time, General Ross was the one who was overseeing the Weapons Plus program, but that after what happened in Harlem with the Abomination, Nick Fury got the World Security Council to shut that program down. But if Ross becomes president in Captain America 4 and wants to restart experiments on perfecting the super soldier serum, it seems like the most likely way he would do that is by restarting the Weapons Plus program under the US military. Or maybe he'll even restart it under the CIA under Valentina, since it was revealed in Black Panther Wakanda Forever that Valentina is actually the director of the CIA. And another reason I think this makes a lot of sense, that I think Marvel Studios could very well be bringing back the Weapons Plus program in these two movies, is because in the comics, another character who got his powers thanks to the Weapons Plus program was Robert Reynolds, the Sentry. And how that story went down in the comics is that Robert Reynolds was, well, he was a tweaker, and he ended up breaking into this lab. And when he was in this lab, he found something that he consumed, and what he consumed ended up being a serum of some kind. It was the Golden Sentry serum. And this serum was created as a part of Project Sentry, which was a spin-off of the Weapon X project. Now, according to the plot leaks for the Thunderbolts movie, in the MCU, the Sentry will instead be created under orders from Valentina, presumably because she's trying to create this ultra-powerful super soldier for her Thunderbolts team that she can send out to do whatever she wants, to do her bidding. But if that's the case, then how exactly does Valentina do this? Who exactly is it that she orders to turn Robert Reynolds into the Sentry? Well, like I said, we now know that Valentina is the director of the CIA and is going to be working with President Ross. So if Ross brings back the Weapons Plus program in Captain America 4, then that is likely what Valentina will use to have the Sentry created, similar to how he was created in the comics. But anyways, going back to Wolverine and how this connects to him, obviously, like I said, there's the whole adamantium side plot in these movies that seem like they will be a big connection to Wolverine and a big way that Marvel Studios are slowly starting to set him up for the future. But also, the introduction of Sentry could be another big step towards the introduction of Wolverine into the MCU as well, because of his connections to the Weapons Plus program and the Weapon X project. Now, from everything we've heard about Marvel Studios' plans for mutants in the MCU, it sounds like they want to first bring back some of the older Fox X-Men characters in projects like Deadpool 3 and Avengers Secret Wars before they start introducing new versions of those characters for the MCU 616 universe. So that's why we are seeing the return of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in Deadpool 3 and Patrick Stewart as Professor X in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And we'll probably see more Fox X-Men characters show up in Avengers Secret Wars. So there's a good possibility that we won't actually see the introduction of any new X-Men characters that are played by new actors until we get to Phase 7. However, that definitely hasn't stopped Marvel Studios from laying out multiple hints to those characters in projects in Phase 4. Because there were a couple of different hints at Wolverine and other X-Men characters just recently in the She-Hulk series. For instance, there was the end credits art showing different sneakers that hinted at a bunch of different X-Men characters like Wolverine and Cyclops in one of the episodes. But the really big Easter egg from She-Hulk came in one of the earlier episodes where we saw an article headline on Jessica's computer that said something about a man with metal claws getting into a bar fight. And that Easter egg was actually a pretty huge deal in my opinion, because it's by far the most direct reference to Wolverine we've ever gotten in the MCU. And it's important because it means that Wolverine already exists in the MCU 616 universe, and that we just haven't seen him yet. Because with the multiverse being introduced in Phase 4 of the MCU, for a long time now there's been rumors about the possibility of Marvel Studios using the multiverse to introduce mutants into the MCU 616 universe. And of course, we do know that mutants do exist out there in the multiverse, because we know Hugh Jackman is returning to play Wolverine in Deadpool 3, and we saw Professor X and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But those aren't mutants of the 616 universe, those are multiversal mutants. And with characters like Kamala Khan and Namor now being confirmed to be mutants in the MCU, on top of something like this Wolverine Easter egg in the She-Hulk series, that would seem to indicate that characters like Wolverine and probably other X-Men characters have actually existed in the MCU 616 universe for a long time now. We've just never seen them show up in any past MCU projects, and when they do finally show up, I'm sure Marvel Studios will come up with some reason why we've never seen them before. And once we finally get to the introduction of those characters and the introduction of Wolverine, the 616 version of Wolverine, it allows Marvel Studios to do all sorts of cool stuff with him that connects him to the MCU's past. You know, they could do a Wolverine origin story or a prequel movie of some kind if they wanted to. And in that, they could show Wolverine going through the Weapon X program, and they could even show him having interactions or battles with other characters in the past that were around back then. Like they could include Isaiah Bradley or Steve Rogers or the Winter Soldier. I mean, just the fact that Wolverine already exists in the MCU really does open up a lot of possibilities when you think about it. But anyways, I feel like I'm rambling at this point. I think I've gotten everything out that I wanted to talk about on this topic. I'm a big Wolverine fan. When I was a kid, Wolverine was by far my favorite comic book character. So yeah, I like talking about Wolverine. So I hope this was easy enough to follow and I didn't ramble too much. But I think that's everything. So yeah, if you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And remember, the best way to support the channel is to share the video. That greatly, greatly helps. And also, if you want to come hit me up on Twitter, come follow the channel there. That's the best place for updates or just to come say what's up. And then also, just one more reminder, if you missed yesterday's video on Secret Wars, Ant-Man Quantumania, and the Marvels, you should definitely check it out. It is the top linked video in the description down below. So yeah, I think that's everything. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I will be back soon.
Please subscribe, like this video, have a great night, and if you like this video, and see you guys later.